and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw a lion. It's not a subject I've tackled a lot, but I've done quite a few animals and I just thought it was a nice subject. I found this picture on Pixabay, so I will put the link in the description below to the picture itself so you can go along and have a look at that and either work from your computer or print it off. It's easy sometimes to work from the computer or especially your tablet. If you get the picture up on a tablet, you can zoom into the things like the eyes and all the detail. You can make that a bit bigger, so when you come to doing the eyes you've got that detail there, so it's sometimes good to work from your tablet if you've got one. Okay, so really, I mean, he's almost straight on to us, but not quite. His nose is off to one side, isn't it? So look at the main shapes to begin with and the measurements. So if you look at the depth of his nose, from the top of his nose to the bottom of his chin, which actually the bottom of his chin is mostly fluff and hair really, to the top of his head, that's sort of a similar measurement, is about halfway down. Now I'm looking at his face now and thinking actually that's going to fit into sort of a diamond shape. So to begin with, I'm just going to put, and I'm going to let his mane go off the picture actually. I'm going to make more of his actual face than the mane itself. And I think really his face is going to more or less fit into a bit of a diamond shape. Now these are only guidelines. I've not got my eraser because I'm just going to carry on showing you how I would tackle it. But obviously you can come back and erase some of these guidelines later. So into the bottom half of that diamond, his nose is going to fit, or his muzzle, you know, his mouth. So that's going to fit into there. Again, that's just a guideline, it's not something that's going to be there permanently. And then his eyes in that top half are just above. So if you think of his eyeline as being about there, and they're quite a width apart. Now if you look at our own eyes, when you're drawing a person's face, the width of the eye is the same as the distance between the two eyes. Now look at this lion, he's got a very big gap between his eyes and it's not much different than his muzzle. So if you just bring your pencil up from the corner of his muzzle, look at that, where the corner of his eye starts, and again on this side, and you've got quite a wide gap between the two. So then we can just roughly put the eye shape in, but don't worry, you can come back later and, you know, refine that, make it better. So it's just getting in the position really rather than all the details. So just roughly put his eye shape in there. And cats have got that, it looks like they're crying, doesn't it, where it comes right down. I mean, we've got that to an extent, but because it's black on the cat, it really shows up. And then you can sort of put a bit of shape in there. And actually I will put the shape of his eyeballs in just because it sort of starts to give you something to work to make it look as if he's alive. Don't look alive until you've got their eyes in, and they've got a very tiny pupil, haven't they? So again, I'm just putting that in, and we'll come back later and put more detail in. So now if we look at his nose, we've got that bit there. Now start and think. So we'll just put that line in actually. I'm just looking at that down to where his nose is, and he's quite chubby, isn't he? He's got you know, compared to us, they've got a very wide nose. And start and think about where his skull is underneath. So if you look to the left hand side, to the left of this eye, you can see a line there where the fur's going over, where it's going around his skull, and this is his eye socket. So always when you're drawing animals and when you're drawing people as well, think about that skeleton underneath and that you've got the skull there, and that's disappearing down the side of his nose. And then we've got a few lines shaping the side of his face there, and this is where we can start and get rid of some of these guidelines, because if you carry that line on right down to his mouth, so this shape at the bottom went right to the bottom of the chin, but his mouth only comes about halfway down that, and we'll start and get some of that shape in there, and it goes off. So if you're drawing him straight on, this will be even, this shape, but because we're seeing him at a slight angle, we're seeing more of this side of his face than that side. So I'm just carrying this one line on all the way around his nose at the moment. You might find it easier just to do a bit at a time rather than try and do a more linear drawing. But that's pretty much the shape of that. And some of these lines up here just emphasise the shape of his nose, but that's really where his fur is going over that bone of his nose. You can imagine this bone's coming out here, and then we get to this area where the, I don't know what you would call it, his actual nostrils there, aren't they? If you can have a look, you can actually see his nostrils. So as you're doing it, really think and look at what these component parts are, because all animals are different, and it's obviously an animal that we're not familiar with. We see our own cats and dogs every day, and we touch them and we stroke them, and we know where bones lie and where muscles lie and things like that. But obviously with a lion, we're not going to have much hands-on experience to know where everything is. So actually, as you're drawing, you're learning about the animal because you're looking at where all those bones and muscles lie. So really think about that. So if you come up here, you can see a dent there, and it's just where his fur's going over, but that's the front of his skull. So you imagine touching the front of your own skull and you can feel it's hard there. So we know that underneath that fur there isn't much flesh before we get to that bone. And again there we can see a couple of marks further up above his eyes, and that will be where his brow bones are, if you like. I mean, I don't know if we call them eyebrows on a lion, but you know what I mean, that's where his brow bones are. And again round here, sort of a cheekbone in a way, you can see where that fur's lying across those bones. He's not a cuddly toy. I've said this before in other videos when I've been doing cows and things. Don't draw him as if he's a cuddly toy. He's a very big, powerful, strong animal, and under there's a lot of muscle. So just think about that when you're drawing, that you don't want him to be soft and cuddly. Okay, so at this point you could perhaps start and get rid of a few of these guidelines. I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to keep drawing on top of them. And here we're going to start and put some whiskers in. Again, the whiskers are lying over his chin, or whatever you want to call it, the lower part of his mouth. I'm sure somebody could tell me in the comments below more technical terms, or if any of you work in a zoo and you know exactly what all these component parts of the lion are called. We won't bother putting his whiskers in just yet, but if we get these lines of where the whiskers go. So if we came to paint this, we'd have to think about how we were going to do the colours with the whiskers and things. We'd have to perhaps mask out the white. He's got, actually, if you look at some of the whiskers further up, some of them are black and some of them are white, so he's got a bit of a variety of colour in his whiskers. And some of the lines you put in earlier, you can keep correcting and keep redefining the lines that are correct. So the ones that you're happy with, that are correct, give them a bit of strength, keep going over them. The ones that you don't like, the lines where you think you've gone wrong a little bit, just ignore them. And the more emphasis you put on the ones that you like, the more he will come out from the page. This pencil, it's one I've had for years. It's I don't know if you can still get them, it's just one I rooted out of the bottom of a pencil case. It's called Pilot Croquis, C-R-O-Q-I-I-S, and it's refillable. I'm not sure if I've got any left of the refills, but it's a nice thick chunky one, so I thought I would use it so that he shows up for you really. So that was the reason for that, but I will have a look and see if they're still available, and if they are I'll get the link and put it in the description below, but they might not be. It might be difficult for me to find because I've had it such a long time. But because it's so thick and chunky, it's making it easy to start and build up some tone. So before I do any more of that detail and tone, I'm going to put in where his mane is. So I haven't done much measuring. I tend to do things by eye, but when you're looking at him, and probably when I'm doing it by eye like this, I'll look back at it later and you'll think, well, actually one or two of those measurements are a bit off. But while you're doing yours, just measure things like from the bottom of the chin to the top of the nose and see how that compares, where it comes up to the width of his face. So if you look at the width of his face, I'll just look on the picture. Yeah, the width across here is similar to the width there, so that's right. So you can check just using your pencil and your finger, that width there should be similar to that from in between his eyes to the bottom of his chin, and just compare things, line things up, look at where things line up together. So the corner of this eye lines up with his cheekbone quite nicely there. I've got that a bit harsh, it comes out a bit more than that, and it's a bit rounder, but we can round him off as we go along and put more detail in. So for now, what I'm going to do is get this mane in. Like I said, so the mane, actually this side is pretty much the same width of his face, so it's going to come out to about here somewhere. And just put a quick guideline in, so we're not going to see the bottom of it, and we're going to see a lot more of it on this side, because again he's got his head that way. Up here he's got it, we need it sort of trimming a bit, doesn't he? He's got a bit of a messy hairdo there. It goes up, and then we're not going to see, well, more or less see the top. The top, if you've got the photograph up there yourself, you'll see that actually the top tip of his mane at the top there, we can't see anyway. And then some of this further back. So there's two sort of tones in his mane, isn't there? It's a lot darker further back, so we want to perhaps concentrate on this foreground bit where it's much lighter. So if we look here, he's got a sort of tufty bit of hair, and that again, although we see hair, if you imagine underneath, the reason that this tufting in this direction, that it's sort of split in the middle, is because that's the centre of his skull, and the hair is growing around the face and off from the skull. And look at your own hair, it grows around the shape of your skull. So now we could spend hours looking at the hairs and which direction they're going, and it would take us a long time to build him up. So I'm not going to carry on too long and let you get bored watching me. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. Again, I did lose my thread there because the camera went off. I'm not sure what's wrong with it today. But yeah, so move around your painting, your drawing rather, because the more you look, the more you see. You need to keep looking. Like I said, we're not familiar with these animals. We don't see them every day. So we need to keep looking and seeing where things go. So as well as that, look at your tones. And that's going to really bring him to life if you get those tones right. So I'm going to carry on now. I'll stop wittering. I don't think there's anything much more I can tell you. Like I say, with animals, really think about the skeleton underneath, where the hair's lying along that skeleton, where the muscles are, and the fact that they're a big, powerful animal, not a cuddly teddy. You know, there's a big bone under here. There's these. You need to get these lines in where the skull is. Otherwise he's going to look too cute and cuddly and not as powerful as he is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a few more lines, and I'm going to put a little splash of colour on him just to bring him to life a bit. And I'm not going to put too much more detail on him. You could go on looking at every single little hair, but you know that's going to take me all day if I do that. Get some of these curly ones. Can you see around the back there is a bit of a mess? He needs his hair brushing a bit. So get a bit of life into some of these hairs. So can you see how I'm not holding my pencil tightly whilst I'm doing this? I'm just really letting it flow and getting some of these messy bits. He's got some real messy bits. But when we put some colour on that, we need it to be a bit more solid. I'm going to put some shadow in here. You know, it's really thick, this hair. It's not thin and wiry. We need to get a bit more shading. And under here, his face is casting shadow on his neck. So that really needs... I haven't got enough difference there between his chin. Can you see? Between his chin, we need to get that much darker, and his body, or his mane should I say. But these are all things, like I said, that you keep looking back and realising that you've done. So I've not got his whiskers in, let's just put some whiskers in. Quite randomly. I think one thing I do like about the picture actually is the way his eyes are staring out at us. I seem to have managed to get the eyes staring at us. And I'm just going to leave it to go off at this side. I'm just going to leave these nice pencil lines and a bit more life into him. He needs to be darker. But we can put some darks in with the colour. Okay, so I hope some of those tips were helpful to you with your drawing. I'm going to stop, like I said a few minutes ago, I'm going to stop talking now and go and get a little bit of colour. I'm not decided which medium yet, and I'll carry on filming and I'll put that at the end. But thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you again soon. Hello again, I'm back. Just to explain that I did, in the middle of that video there, lose some footage. I don't quite know what was going on with my camera today. It's just one of those days, I'm afraid. But basically, the little bit of footage that I lost, I was just talking about how you should follow the skull around with the hairs. If you look at the things like the cheekbones where I've put the shading in there, left that little bit of white under his eyes, put the shading above where his sort of eyebrows go and things like that. It's all following the skull around. The hair, you know, goes around that. And with an animal, getting their eye sockets in the right place, you know, is as vital as the eyes, really. It really forms the shape of the face. So just be mindful of where those bones lie, just under the surface, really. There's not much flesh there. You know, we've got that hair and then very little between there and the skull itself. So just be thinking about all the time where those are and where the light's going to hit the skull. So on the top of the brow bones and then on top of the nose and things like that, and that's all going to help make his shape. Okay, so it wasn't really much more than that I lost, and I do apologise for that, and thank you once again for watching. Okay.